.47 miles, 751 per mile. Run commuted home today with the Feiyu G6 gimbal for GoPro and other action cameras. Now I realized that I have this in upside down. This is not the way you're supposed to install it, but this is the way I ran with it today. This is the way I installed it because this just makes much more sense to me. This is also how you were supposed to install it when I had the G4 gimbal, which is one that I had, but I couldn't use that one anymore because that one only fit my older GoPro, the GoPro Hero 3 Plus Black that I had. Once I upgraded to the GoPro Hero 5, my GoPro didn't fit in the gimbal anymore, so I was kind of gimbal-less, although if I just used the old GoPro, I was able to do that. But I had been basically gimbal-less for a while. My friend, the Everyday Dad, reviewed this a little while ago, and based on his recommendation, I decided to pick one up. I had just gotten a disbursement from Amazon for the affiliate links. So I had about $50 that you guys had helped me to earn. And so I put that towards getting this gimbal. The price at the time was like $230. So it came down to $180, and then there was some tax and things like that. But it's something that I bought with my own money and some of the money that I'm reinvesting into the channel. But it is not a sponsored post. They didn't send one to me. But here's what you get with the G6, and let me take the camera out. So what you get with it is the gimbal itself. That's this part. Plus, now it comes in a really nice case. It's one of these kind of like soft shell cases with the egg crate foam on the inside. This one has some cords in to kind of secure everything down. And this little box has some cables in it, a USB cable and a USB-C cable for charging and for connecting the GoPro to the gimbal itself. Because there is a large battery in here, there's no separate battery charging kind of cradle like there were in the previous versions. And so you just charge this on the side here in this covered USB micro USB port. On this side there's an LCD screen that tells you what the battery life is, what mode you're shooting in, and lots of other information, whether you're connected by Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to your camera. And also there is a trigger button, so if you are connected to your camera or your GoPro, which you can do by Wi-Fi, you can hit this button and start and stop the recording. So it's really nice. You don't have to touch the camera everything can get controlled kind of from here. You got a joystick over here that controls movement, panning, up and tilting up and down, depending on the mode you're in. And this button over here is really nice. This controls the yaw, I think that is. So if the camera if the horizon goes a little funny, which was a big problem on the Feiyu G4, if that becomes a problem, you can correct that as you go with this side dial right here. The side button will change the shooting modes on your camera. And so this changes the shooting modes on the gimbal. This one on the side changes the shooting modes on the camera. So with the GoPro, for example, you can shoot a video, you could shoot a photo, or you could shoot a time lapse. So you can alternate between those modes if you want to do that in case you ever use those. I rarely use any of those other ones. On the side here, there is a 1/4-20 mount. So if you do want to mount an external microphone, that's something else that you can do. Also in the package that I got outside the box, so it came in a regular G6 box, but outside the box, but inside the bigger box that everything came in, it also came with this, which is a clip that you add on if you have a Hero. And then it came with this as well, which is nice. It's one of those foldable tripod things that are coming with a lot of gimbals these days, because when you put the gimbal down, you want to be able to leave it on and set it down without it's like, if you let go of the gimbal, it starts spinning like crazy. So if you set it down here, you have a nice platform. Plus there's a capability of connecting this gimbal to an app. And so if you do that, then you can connect it remotely and have it kind of follow you around and do things like that. And so it's nice to have the platform of that tripod to keep everything steady. And also what it comes with is another kind of accessory that has 1/4-20 mounts, male and female on each side. And what it is it is an extendable stick. So you can make your gimbal longer. And so there's a 1/4-20 here. This is a nice long stick, and I might use this for a lot of things, and not just the gimbal. So this is a nice little accessory that came with it in the package. So you can make your gimbal stick longer if you want, which I like, because then with that you can get kind of like a faux or like a low drone type of view. You get the stick real high, real long, and you get your camera really high up. With the gimbal, you get nice and steady footage, and it makes for a cool effect. I just went over like all that stuff really quickly. If you want a more in-depth review, go see the Everyday Dad's review. His is super thorough and goes through all the details here. But what I really wanted to focus on and talking about is using this thing for running. Right, so I'm used to using some gimbals in the past for running, but this thing I just found like it wasn't my favorite for running. The handle here is definitely thicker, but it's shorter, which I kind of like the idea of that, because if I'm gonna run with it, I want it to be more compact. But because of the way this angle is, it was really hard to kind of hold this when it wasn't in gimbal mode. So like you're not gonna run with the gimbal like this the entire time. That's just gonna be too heavy. And so a lot of times you'll shoot a little bit, whatever you're doing, low angles, high angles, you know, moving the gimbal around. But then there'll be a lot of times where you just need to run with it. And let me put the camera in so you give you an idea of what it looks like. And I'll also talk about why I kind of put it in upside down when I had it. So you have this, and these screws are really annoying to kind of do and undo. And so I usually, with the other gimbal, would only undo these screws just enough so that I could slide the camera in and then clamp everything down. But with the way that this G6 is designed, is that the lens is supposed to go closer to the motor rather than farther away. But the only way to do that is to completely take off this bracket, and it's a two-handed operation kind of thing. So you have to unscrew it completely, and then once you do that, you got to make sure the screws don't fall out, although because part of it is threaded and part of it isn't, it does a pretty good job of not falling out. Then you put the camera in with the camera part closer to the motor, and then put the clamp back on, and again it's a two-handed operation to get this in. Now I'll screw it in, and it is a thumb screw, so that's nice. You don't have to get a tool out. All right, so then you power it on, and you're off to the races. And so, see, this is still upside down. There we are. So now it's Now it's right side up. And one of the things that it would do, normally when I'm running with the camera, there's a couple of things that are kind of odd about this. Is a lot of times I'll hold it like this so I could show you guys what I'm seeing, right? And then other times I might turn it around towards me so I can see what I'm seeing. But if you tilt the angle a little too far, it won't give me the angle. It thinks that I'm trying to show one side versus the other, and I don't know how to control this or turn it off. And no matter almost what shooting mode, and there's like 5 different shooting modes on this thing, you can do everything from a single tap of this to a quintuple tap. I haven't been able to really figure out what all the different modes do. As far as I can tell, there's 2 modes. One where you have to use the joystick to make it pan, and another mode where the panning is controlled by your wrist movement, right? And so in this mode, everything follows you, right, depending on the angle of the gimbal. And in the regular mode, everything kind of gets controlled. Doesn't matter what you're doing, everything gets controlled by the joystick, right? In terms of running with this thing, it was fine to be able to hold it, above my head and move it down and have the thing follow me around. So I think that all worked out okay. But the problem is I don't like to run with this thing on the entire time because it gets heavy and I don't want to put too much strain on the motors in terms of if I just didn't care what it was doing and did this, it's just going to drive this thing crazy. And so frequently when I run with the gimbal, I will turn it off for parts when I know I'm not going to take another video for a little while. And so now this is off, and with the other gimbal that I had, I was easily able to kind of grab it in a way that I was holding it like a baton. But this one, because of this angled bracket here, which I think the design choice is they do that so that way you can get a clearer view this way of what's going on these screens here. So before, these motors were set a little bit higher and they would block your view of your LCD screen. They've offset it down a little bit, and I think that's just so you could get a view of these screens. But because of that, my hands just aren't big enough to like hold this in a way that it doesn't rotate. I think this is how I was holding it, like this. So I had my finger here pinching this motor so this wouldn't just spin around like crazy, and holding it like this. So I found myself like running like this, and this is just uncomfortable. I know I have small hands, and it's really evident when I'm trying to use this thing. It was just really uncomfortable. So there are some ergonomic problems that I had because I'm using it different than probably most of the people that are buying this gimbal are going to use it. But it was just an issue that I had. So this is a really solid gimbal, but I need to invest more time into it to learn how it works and to kind of get a feel for the different modes so I can get it to the positions in terms of camera angles that I want without having to think about what buttons am I pushing. Do I twist my wrist or do I use the joystick? All those kinds of things. Decisions that I didn't have to make with the last one. And so they've given me more capability and functionality, but they've also given more complexity with it. So it's just something there's definitely a part of my frustration with this that's my fault. But I think there's other design choices that they've made which make lots of other people happy, that make it harder for me to use this thing. I found myself slowing down quite a bit when I was running with this thing, and not because it's heavy or because holding it out so I can film myself was that uncomfortable. It's just none of it is that like natural. That I could get it in a place where I could still run and use the gimbal. So again, maybe that's something I need to get used to, but my first impressions are that this wasn't really the most natural thing to run with. And so those are my overall thoughts. If you've used this gimbal before, especially if you used it for running or other sports like bicycling or something where you're going to be moving quickly, let me know in the comments what you think about it in terms of how you've been able to use it on the fly. I'd love to hear from you guys down there. Thanks for watching today's video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?